That's it. I think we are live. Hello, everyone. Welcome to another session of Factors.ai Road to Revenue LinkedIn Live. This is something which we have been doing with senior marketing leaders, agency owners, and revenue leaders across B2B over the last couple of months. And we have had exemplary people join us. And today we have Palmer Houchins from G2. He's head of marketing at G2, and he's joining us. Uh, very warm welcome, Palma. We have been looking forward to this for almost more than a month, so I'm very happy to have you here. Thanks a lot for making time to talk to us.
Yeah, thanks for the invitation to have me on.
Great. So before I introduce Palma, for the sake of audience, I would have to announce like why we actually got interested in getting someone from G2 into our podcast. Uh, we are one of G2 partners. We bring in G2 data, but fundamentally, what Factors.ai does is we bring in signals from the entire buyer journey, right from the ad channel data. It can be Google search, Bing search, Meta, LinkedIn ads. We are a LinkedIn marketing partner as well. The website data, what is the user behavior on the website, email automation data, or the other marketing automation data which comes in email, and also the CRM data. We bring in all this data together. One interesting data point which we added was also G2. That is, G2 provides an API integration for common customers. They can actually bring in the G2 data. Currently, we are at 250 plus customers. We have almost 80 common customers, which are there across the board. And especially in APAC alone, I think there is an overlap of almost 44 or 45 companies which use Factors.ai and G2, which is there. And the interesting part, when we work with them, we were able to actually see the impact of G2 on the buyer journey. I'll just put some basic points where there are quite a few customers in the SaaS space, software as a service space, which is there. Companies where directly from paid search, directly come directly into your website and then get into a demo or become a pipeline. If the conversion rate is X%, when they also see G2 as part of the order of relevance, the conversion rates almost jumps by 50 to 60%. More importantly, companies which actually have seen G2 first, or that is either a G2 all page or a G2 grid page or a alternatives page or a category page or seen an ad on G2 or any activity on G2, and then when they have come to the website, either through paid or organic, and then they have converted, the conversion rate have almost jumped by 2.5x. And we are doing more research by individual journeys and other things, but this was significant amount of increase in the general bump up rates which are there. And that came to our next question saying that, okay, there are quite a lot of SaaS companies and many of them, almost all of them are on G2. But why do not all of them buy G2 intent data so that they can use this data along with the rest of the data, which is like, how does G2 influence your paid search? How does G2 influence your LinkedIn ads? How does G2 influence your, let's say, your sales motion? Or how does G2 influence your marketing ads motion, etc.? Becomes very interesting use cases which we can do. And that was very interesting. Then we thought like, okay, let's get into the Lions Den itself and ask them the questions about like, what are the insights which G2 give? What are the trends in the buyer journey which G2 has? How else can marketers use marketers and even revenue folks can use the G2 data to run better, including your partners and other things? That's the genesis of the podcast. So very happy to have you here, Palmer. So will be our line of questioning and around this thing also.
That sounds great, and thanks again for having me on. I think you had a LinkedIn post citing a few of those statistics a month or so ago, and yeah. I thought it was so well done. I thought you were kind of trying to steal my job. So great to see those G2 insights, and I think it's a great question of hey, if you're seeing this much power in the G2 buyer intent data, why aren't we seeing more folks adopt it, or how do we get more folks to adopt it? So it sort of preach the gospel of that intent data being very powerful.
Yes. The only thing is like, as G2 themselves say, and I went through quite a few G2 podcasts, it's like trust is very important.
Yeah.
Trust in a sense where like, while anyone can say that this is happening in the market and this is a very great tool and other this thing, more importantly, bringing actual relevance context into like why it is important, why people are talking about it, having a great content around it actually helps. And that's basically, I'm trying to do a G2 on G2 in a sense, like trying to build a kind of it's a meta story here to say that how G2 actually helps on the buyer journey. But before we get into the nitty gritties of G2, we would really like to know you as a person and your career. I did go through your profile. I mean, pretty splendid, right? From journalism and history, history is one of my favorite topics. Then into marketing, you had been in agency. Most importantly, you're one of the few marketing CMOs and leaders which we have seen have grown through marketing ops in the first job, then later into this thing. So please share your journey, like how you ended up becoming a B2B marketer, and then we'll get on with.
Yeah, I'm happy to do it. I wish I could say I had a grand plan of how I ended up in this role. A lot of it was sort of happenstance. Like you mentioned, I went to school. I studied journalism and history, and I really did think I wanted to go kind of be a journalist. But I got about a year from completing my degree and thought, hey, you know what? I don't think I want to go work at a newspaper. That's just not what excites me. And I thought, you know what, I like business, but and marketing's got a through line between being a good communicator, being a good writer. I can go put those writing skills to good use. So I did an internship too, kind of on the marketing side, and I actually spent the early part of my career in more of the agency and sort of music and entertainment world, always doing digital marketing though. That was sort of I was kind of in the early days of before Web 2.0 of figuring out like how exactly is digital marketing coming to life, like what's this new media, like what's social media going to mean for that. And so spent the early part of my career doing that, and frankly got to a spot where I said, okay, I love digital marketing, but I think I'd like to go, I'm really interested in the tech and the software space. And so I was applying to grad schools. I was going to get my MBA, and in the process of doing that, an old coworker of mine reached out. He had just started working at this new company. Said, "Hey, we've got a brand manager role at this company, and I think you'd be a great fit for it." And that company ended up being a one I'd never heard of at the time, but most folks have heard of now, and that's Mailchimp. So I joined Mailchimp back about 13 years ago, and it was early days. We were competing against a really big incumbent and constant contact there, and I ended up spending about 8 years of my career really getting all those lessons that I hope to learn in tech and software and in an MBA program through learning by doing at Mailchimp. So I started out as a brand manager there, but I spent time kind of building out a marketing ops and then an integrated marketing function there, and really just learned all kinds, like I mentioned, learned by doing, and got to wear a number of different hats. I think I did everything from product marketing to events to analytics to demand gen, like you name it. I got to do it. And so that was just sort of a great a learning experience for me. Also a great, I joined the company at less than 100 people and I left. It was a 1,300 person company and has since gone on to sell for $12 billion to Intuit. So a very successful enterprise there. And also just one of those companies that was fundamentally a B2B software company, but didn't feel beholden to necessarily follow the same playbook that every B2B software company did. So I could see the good and the bad, what works and what doesn't. After 8 years, I decided it was time for something new. And so I jumped over to a company called CallRail, based here in Atlanta as well. That's conversation intelligence and sort of phone tracking software that really helps marketers kind of tie inbound phone calls to their marketing efforts. And I spent about 2 years there.
Kind of early stage attribution.
Yeah, exactly. If you think about it, it's attribution for companies. A lot of these mom and pop stores, think of like a plumber or even like a car dealership. They're like most folks want to call in and set up an appointment there. That's slowly changing, but you still get a lion's share of your business through phone calls. And they're like, I have no idea if that ad I placed on Facebook or on Google, or frankly, that billboard that I put by the highway, if that's working. And so with CallRail, you can sort of integrate that and see what's actually driving phone calls, what's making your phone ring. And so I spent 2 years there leading their marketing efforts, and then got a call from a former coworker of mine who had joined G2 as CMO. And I had been a G2 customer at both Mailchimp and CallRail. Frankly, at Mailchimp, we were very early customers. When I joined G2, I was surprised to learn that it hadn't been around longer, just because we were so early to use it at Mailchimp. We really loved the value prop there. And so joined G2 about 3 years ago, initially leading our brand and comms function, and then jumped into the head of marketing role at the beginning of 2023. So had about a little over a year in that role, and that kind of brings us where we are today. But it's been a fascinating journey, and like you said, I wish I had said I had some grand plan of B2B software is where I want to go and what I want to be doing. But sometimes you just kind of follow the linear steps that your life takes you on, and here we are.
Well, that's great. I mean, actually, there is some pattern. People who have, I mean, since you have been in journalism, you can write. Storytelling is a natural skill form which comes in and which extends into marketing as well. So fundamentally, you guys are marketers, are great storytellers. So that there is that pattern which I'm seeing. In India, we see on the other hand where like people who rage on engineering or who don't want to get too much onto engineering move into the brand and the marketing side and the MBA side. So we see a lot of engineers who eventually have become marketers, but it's always great to see the more of a liberal arts into marketing and other functions. So that
I think it's like the best marketers have that left brain, right brain, or sort of, it is an art and a science, and it's not one or the other. It's kind of both. And sometimes you can embody that all yourself. Sometimes you get, a really good left brain marketer, pair them with a right brain marketer, and that's kind of where the magic's created.
Actually, you have done a little one step ahead because you had worked on marketing ops. You had actually been on the both sides as well, being running through the instincts. That's great. Cool. That's about you. That's about G2. But let's get into little more details. Given your experience is more than 10 years, G2 has also been around for close to 10 years plus, which is there. How has the buyer journey as such has changed in B2B?
Yeah. I think we've really seen, and I think G2's existence was well timed to sort of benefit from this change. But what we've seen is a massive, it's a consumerization of B2B buying is what I would say. The same way we saw, things, maybe Amazon or Yelp or some of these Craigslist, even these very disruptive companies on the consumer side. What you're seeing now is that's happening on the B2B side. So the buying journey has changed from this very hierarchical, siloed process where you put out RFPs and have to go through very detailed kind of sales motions to, frankly, it's not just the way of buying, but the speed with which buying happens is a lot faster than it used to be as well. And so when I look back to 10 years ago, and I was even reflecting just before this on some software purchases we made when I was at MailChimp, where it was really like, okay, I went to a website and I have a little line of what they do, but then I've got to go through this whole BDR qualification to the AE and again, a lot of that still happens now, but you can be much more focused and much more rapid. And there's also a product-led component that I think is been very disruptive, but that buying process seems to have gotten a lot faster. And it seems like there's a lot more, whether it's product-led or not, a lot more of it is self-serve. So you can do a ton of research on your own as a buyer through things like G2, but even other avenues, whether they're just better communities online. I think we were more reliant on our peers to make recommendations than we were before. We're not just beholden to the Gartner analyst or whoever it might be that's saying you need to go buy this.
Go buy this.
So I think that's been the big sea change that we've seen. And I think we're still trying to figure out what that means long term. I think COVID probably even just accelerated that even more. But what we're kind of looking at is what's going to be the new normal. There still are some good, gatekeepers and there are reasons why you'd want to engage with sales teams more deeply. But I think that what we've seen is the front end of the B2B buying process is moving a lot faster and a lot more self-serve than before.
Got it. Oh, that's actually interesting. And I think we can also see it in the evolution of both RevTech and MarTech tools, because fundamentally from being sales-led, which is what generally gave you the CRM kind of tools, then eventually to email automation tools, and then started with marketing-led tools with ABM products like SixSense and Demandbase and others, which is there is marketing, and now adding a lot more functionalities around it, whether it's community tools or review sites like G2 and others, where it's actually going to the customer from all the way to the seller, to the seller to actually to the buyer as a shift, which is
yeah, you're exactly right. Of like, there's a fundamental shift from what had been very vendor centric of like, what's the best process for you to just keep all of these things there, to I think it's more buyer centric. And frankly, I think that's a good thing, because I think the best products win out, and the folks who run the best buying process, whether it be through sales, marketing, or even just product experience, those products tend to be the ones that we're seeing to win out these days.
Got it. That's great. So now comes to the larger question about G2 and G2's influence on the buyer journey. One thing which we see, and this is also both anecdotal and also pretty much novel, is like almost every company has every software SaaS company has a G2 page. Maybe would have 3 reviews at times. It's surprising when we actually get into demo calls and try to check their G2 reviews. There are only like 3 or 4 reviews. Some have 1,000 reviews plus as well. The thing, and that actually I'm talking about Series A, Series B companies. I'm not even talking about like companies which have like HubSpot or something of that sort. Second thing is like, it's kind of like pervasive as a brand in terms of like G2 becomes integral as part of the software SaaS ecosystem. It's not like a brand is pretty well known. So this too, and also most importantly, when I search for something, the first normal Google search, the first kind of hits which I get about the product and other the thing is a G2 page. So you guys have done a extremely great SEO this thing. How did this start? What are the stats around G2 in terms of like what's the kind of buyer data or the customer data which you have at an overall level? If you can throw some light into it, then we can also get into like what are the kind of intelligence that G2 has, and then get into the other part.
Yeah, great question. So at a high level, G2 sees about 90 million software buyers visit the site a year. 40 million of those sort of kind of centered in North America, and then 20 to 25 million in both kind of the European EMEA region and then the APAC region. So very much a global customer base that we're or global buyer software buyer customer base that we're serving there. And then what you see that what that turns into is its reviews. We just crossed, I think we're about 2.6 million reviews across the site. 160,000 different products listed on the site. Wow. That's just growing more and more. I mean,
so can we assume that the number of software SaaS products in the globally will be 160, or SaaS companies would be 160K?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's more. I think we do a great job of covering it, but there's certainly we don't have 100% coverage of every single software product that's out there. We've worked with some folks like, you know, Scott Brinker with his kind of MarTech landscape that he puts together and sort of overlaid how much is on G2 versus represented there. And we do have I would say we have the vast majority, but that speaks less to sort of like, is G2 keeping up with everything, but just how fast the landscape is evolving and growing. And we see new products added daily. And you know, like again, that speaks to the proliferation of cloud software. It also speaks to folks just getting smarter and understanding, hey, maybe 10 years ago, I didn't feel like I needed to be on G2, but I need to be there today because I know the software buyers are going to be there. And that's what we'd like to see. I think we also stay ahead of the curve when you look at comparing us to maybe some of the analyst firms out there. We're always eager to create new categories. We work closely with folks to just sort of like, look around the bend to kind of see what's new and help folks create new categories. That works well for the vendors, but it even works better for the buyers who like, you know, maybe I need this specific MarTech solution, not just a typical marketing automation platform. I need X, Y, or Z. And so we're keen to help software buyers get connected with vendors in the right way.
No, actually, that's interesting that you brought in, and actually the stats are pretty good. It's like close to 8 million people on your website on a monthly basis. That's pretty insane, and nobody randomly comes into a G2 page. It's not like a Netflix or a Twitter, because anyone who's coming there is a software buyer or a reviewer or is evaluating something in some form. Second is like, even if you discount by 20-25%, that's still 6 million people, with almost 40% of them or 50% of them being in North America, Europe, and other thing, which is the large buying segment which is there. Almost 160,000 software companies or software products listed on your setup. So that's also another insane thing in terms of the scale and breadth at which you see. And most importantly, you made a great point about categories and establishing new categories. Anecdotally, a friend actually recently mentioned, and this happened twice. One of them said that, okay, this is my category is not project management, but it's a specialized form of project management. G2 eventually created a category for that, and now there is at least 4 or 5 companies which is there in that category, which is there, and then they compete and then they build around it. Similarly, other companies which are entering into the new areas, because it can be something like you might be similar to Okta, but you are a variant of an Okta in software management, which is there. Hence, that becomes a new category. So G2 actually creates trends around what are the new categories which are coming through and other this thing. So I just wanted to divert a little bit before I get into the more ingrained details of what intelligence which G2 gives. What are the trends in categories which you are seeing in the last 1 year, given that last 1 year having has been a little harsh on software buying overall. Everyone is going more ROI, tight-fisted in terms of budgets and other thing. But what are the trends you are seeing both in terms of categories, growth in terms of software products, and also in terms of buying trends?
Yeah, well, great question. On the category side, I think we're at around 2,100 categories. So if you think 160,000 products, 2,100 categories with which those products sit in, and of course, products can sit across multiple categories. And so there, we're still seeing a continued sort of category creation happening, even in the SaaS winter that a lot of us, that we've been in. There's two areas where we're seeing a lot of growth from a category perspective. One of them is probably not surprising to anybody that's been paying attention to software over the past year, and that's AI. AI is just booming. I mean, we're creating new categories around that every month. We're seeing new entrants. It's very much still the early days of that, but a bit of a gold rush happening there in terms of how much movement that we're seeing. So we're trying to stay close to all the new developments there and keep our taxonomy and sort of categories reflective of that very emerging landscape. The other side that I think is more established and traditional, but has grown in spite of the sort of the doldrums that we may have seen on the B2B side is the cybersecurity landscape continues to grow, to flourish. We're seeing a lot of new categories created there. So those are really the two when we kind of roll up from a numerical perspective where we're seeing growth. That's not to say we're seeing declines elsewhere, but more that we're not seeing quite the rate of growth in some of the other categories there.
Got it. So that's pretty amazing. That's like a good category, more expected on the unexpected lines, nothing new information as what it has actually given and other this thing. Just to come back to the more primal topic of G2 influence in your buyer journey. Yeah. You mentioned early that you were an early user of G2, right? From your MailChimp days and maybe CallRail days, and then how you this thing. How did you use G2 initially? What did you use G2 for? How would you use, if you are in MailChimp now or as a senior marketer in another company, how would you use G2 now?
Yeah, well, it's funny. I probably used G2 at MailChimp and CallRail as a vendor before I did as a buyer. It was a great way for us to connect with buyers and to really less so the sort of the buyer intent side in the early days and more of just the customer validation of like getting those reviews, helping show that we're a leader in the category. Obviously, email marketing was one of the early categories there on G2, and so we were able to show our kind of category leadership early, and same with call tracking at CallRail. So I think what we know about the software buyer journey is this. We've got some statistics that show 98% of enterprise software searches or enterprise software kind of buying processes start with the search. So they're going to Google and they're just, dropping in something that they're looking for. And more times than not, you're going to see G2 pretty high up those category listings. So, hey, I need an ERP solution, whatever it may be. I ended up on G2. I don't think that that's a completely linear journey. It doesn't necessarily then they go to G2, they find who's number one, they click to the website and they go buy. It doesn't happen that way. We see a lot of data that shows the research portion of the journey, especially in this more democratized self-service one, is where the lion's share of software buyers are spending their time, and I think G2 is a big part of that.
Search. So fundamental search. If I want to buy a software or if I want to look at a ERP software, I search and I come in, and G2 has a listing.
Yes, has a listing there, and the way that we tell folks of with that traffic is, listen, the folks who are on G2 are in market buyers. Like no one's just going to G2 to just, oh, I was bored, so I'm going to go read G2. Like you mentioned, that's what Netflix, that's what Twitter's for. So these are folks who are there actually trying to solve for something, or just getting kind of early information that they can act on later. And so what we've seen, and this is not just us. I mean, there's been research that you mentioned Winter earlier. I was on they put out some great B2B buying kind of survey data recently that just showed, yes, folks in that kind of research and evaluation phase, folks are heavily leaning on their peers, their networks, the communities that they're a part of, and they're leaning on sites like G2 as a part of that to help inform that. So I really do think if you want to be part of that consideration set, folks aren't going to go out and request demos at 10 or 20 different vendors. They're going to narrow in on 3 or 5, and G2 is a key part of being part of that process. And some of our own internal data, survey data, shows that no matter who you are, no matter how big or small, how mom and pop or enterprise you are as a software buyer, 90% of folks use third-party review sites as part of their buying process. So we just think it's a place that you need to be to show up in that journey, or else you're opening yourselves up to not be on that consideration set for someone else to be part of that.
No, that's, I think it's pretty well established, like customer-led marketing, or more importantly, having reviews or customer reviews matter for any buyer. Buyers are going to ask for third-party reviews, going to work, or at least look outside before, or do some sort of research before they actually buy. And that is the B2Cification. I mean, we have gone past the stage whether it's needed or not to the time. Like this is something which is fundamental, and hence it needs to be looked upon, and hence this data is due. The second thing is, like, we know G2 is important. I know I'll get listed on G2. I know I'll get customer reviews on G2. How does G2 make sure that the reviews on G2 are trustable?
Oh, yeah. Great question. And especially in sort of, that's the flip side of this AI coin of what's that doing from a from a review standpoint? Are folks just throwing in, hey, I want to get this this gift card, so I'm just going to get ChatGPT to write a quick review, and then I'm going to throw that in there. So trust is paramount for us. We want to make sure that the people who are leaving the reviews are actually the folks who are using the software. And that's where we can differentiate in a way that consumer review sites like Amazon or even, TripAdvisor can't. Like we require screenshots, we require sort of proof of employment and proof of use of that. So that's the first part of that for us. We've got a 30-person moderation team that their only charge is make sure that we're only accepting kind of verified, trusted reviews onto G2. Now, AI adds a new component of that. And we do end up rejecting about a third of the reviews that get submitted to G2 because we don't think that they pass muster. They don't cross the bar of that we can 100% validate and trust that this person is who they say they are, and that they're actually using this product, and that they didn't just ask Claude or ChatGPT to go write the review for them. So we have some both what I would call automated safeguards on our side. So using AI to detect AI, but then we also just have trusted sort of human resources that we can go put in manually validating and reviewing those. So again, that for us is number one. If we don't create an ecosystem of trust and sort of belief there, then buyers won't trust us, folks, and that just has a cascading effect down the line.
Got it. So a couple of things more than this, because I mean, it's established, like you have to be on G2. There is some certain review. Second, like you can actually garner reviews through trusted resources and make sure that only your proper customers who have used your product give your reviews and other this thing. But the G2 plans go beyond that, right? Because we see that while we have close to 250 plus customers and other this thing, close to only 50 of them have the buyer intent plans and other this thing. What is the additional data which can G2 give to a prospective customer which is otherwise not available elsewhere at all?
Yeah, great question in terms of what G2 offers there that you're not going to get elsewhere. I think that there's a couple different levels of comparison that you're going to get, of seeing how you shape up, seeing how different vendors shape up against each other, and on very specific segments or wavelengths of how is this vendor doing with an enterprise audience versus an SMB audience. On the same side, you can kind of look at that and say, I want to compare this incumbent who's been around for a while with maybe an upstart, and look at it purely through kind of ease of use or implementation, and know that those are just things that you can't get everywhere else. And it's why we just have a fundamentally different model than say the Gartner sort of or Forresters of the world, who it's very much a top down sort of look at these folks. Ours is a bottom up view. Like, we believe in the wisdom of the crowds. If you know the history of G2, it was originally G2 Crowd. Now we rebranded it to just G2, but that's because we really do believe in the great book called Wisdom of the Crowds, that if we aggregate this, the real highlights are going to come through in the way that a single analyst or a single individual may not be able to cover the breadth and the depth that we can get through G2 by that broader audience there.
Got it. Any other insights which this thing, because I'll actually add onto it, because I'm just more trying to get if there is any set of details which otherwise wouldn't be possible to get within outside. For example, is there any category page, or is there any competitors or alternatives or G2 ad pages which you get, which you wouldn't find?
Oh yeah, I mean, we have I would say that our kind of review, our grid reports, and especially kind of the momentum grids, where you can look at like who's moving the fastest right now. That's just data you're not going to be able to get anywhere else. We've also, speaking of AI, added a lot of AI functionality. So we've got kind of what we call pros and cons, that are sort of high level snippets that AI kind of generates of what's the good and the bad, or what you should know you're going to get and then watch out for with these vendors. Those are tough things to get at a high level without the data that we have, and then there's also a lot of kind of vendor owned pieces, whether they be screenshots, kind of video demos that you can have on G2 and engage with there. And then the last one I'll say that we're still really leaning into and building out, it's less than a year old at this point, is we've launched sort of an AI tool called Monty that gives you a completely different experience on G2. Most folks are either used to, I'm going to search for email marketing software and then end up on G2 and then go through there, or I'm going to land on G2 and search for this particular vendor. Now with Monty, you can just say, hey, I'm a mid-market company, and I really need a marketing automation tool that's going to integrate with 6sense, and boom, it's off to the races, and you're getting that interaction in a different way. And listen, I think long down the line, that's going to, when we talk about search and sort of how AI plays into that in the future, there's maybe a big difference in how software buying habits will evolve with that. But I think what we're seeing right now is we've got a very rich data set. We like to think of our data set as sort of an iceberg. There is this portion of it that you can see on G2 that you can go and see. But if you ever left a review on G2, we ask for a lot more information than is publicly kind of showcased there. So that's where we think that we can sort of supercharge Monty and create a really interesting AI-powered buying experience by surfacing some of those data points that just the average user isn't going to see after a Google search.
Got it. That's amazing. I mean, one thing is like the data points, and at our end, given that we are an analytics and we pull from the G2 API, I can also share some more additional things, like we can see which companies have seen ad on competitors page, which companies have been on the grid, which companies have been on the deal page, which companies have looked at pricing, which companies have looked at alternatives, etc. What we also do at Factors.ai is we see this data from G2. We also see data on the website, like which companies have come to your pricing page, your own pricing page, which companies have seen your case studies or shown intent on your demo form, etc. Similarly, we also get data from LinkedIn to see which companies have seen your LinkedIn ad, or which companies have come to your website from this particular alternative keyword. What this helps us, like, we have been able to create nuanced audiences for or like even show the buyer journey in this thing. Like this company has first checked your G2 alternative page and has also seen your ad on a competitor page, then visited your website. Parallelly, they have also seen your LinkedIn ad, and now they are on your demo page. This is huge importance for any account executive or SDR who actually gets into a demo call. Why? I mean, because like the company has been in market because G2 says that, because there's no reason why they should have been in the alternatives page, and they have also seen an ad. So which means the G2 ad is also working. Second is now they are coming to my page because now they are open to actually check an alternative, and then they have signed up for a demo. So now I can actually say that this is the alternative you are comparing me with. I am better than this in these ways. That's a SDR pitch which you can do. Second pitch is like, there are list of all companies which are looking at a grid, and grid is a much larger thing. So if I'm looking at let's say email marketing software or a CRM software, it's a much larger set of companies, but they have never been on your website. So for this list of companies, let me run targeted LinkedIn ads so that I can eventually get brand aware to them and eventually come back to them. Or can I make sure that for these set of companies, 6sense, or let's say I can run ads on any ABM platform which is there, so that they eventually come back into my website or other things. So that's a marketing use case which has come. Third, interestingly, we have also seen customer success team using this data. For example, they want to know which of their existing customers, which the data which they get from their CRM, is currently looking at the alternatives on G2 pages and looking at your pricing, because this is the time of churn. This is the time of retention is tougher. Everyone is looking for every penny of ROI. They're saying like, okay, your price is $1,500 a month. The alternative is there for $1,200. G2 has good reviews about them. Why shouldn't I shift? And these questions come. So actually, within the buyer journey, you can see so many intricacies. Like once you map the journey out, then multiple teams can start using this data and then build this. That's something which I feel is extremely unique, which comes into G2's this thing, and also lands into your website and your other data points, which is otherwise not known.
Well, I love those examples that you just laid out, and I think that it reminds me of two things, or a couple of things. One of which is not all in-market buyers are created equal. So like what you're doing is essentially what you just laid out. The three things are sort of milestones in the customer journey of like what's sort of like, let's call it mid-funnel, because these folks are at least taking some action, who's bottom funnel and like ready to convert that we need to act on, and then who do we need to retain is sort of that third piece that you're talking about there. And I think G2's data is unique in being able to help inform that. But also what I love about your examples, and this is something we preach, of like G2 data is sort of better together. Like you can leverage it through factors. You can leverage it through LinkedIn, through HubSpot, through 6sense, through Demandbase, through all of these places. And it just gets better, richer, and more actionable when you do that. And so I think that that's unique. And I think there was another thing that came to mind is just around, I think we're hearing a lot of marketers, and it's, whether it happens this time or not, but Google says by the third quarter they're going to turn off cookies in all of all the Chrome browsers, and so listen, that doesn't necessarily affect every channel that a marketer's on, but it affects some of them more deeply than others. And I think what's great about some of the examples you just mentioned is that you're talking about first-party data like your website, CRM, your email list, and then second-party data, which is G2. Like we're not affected by that. Cookies could disappear tomorrow, and we're still being able to help you create this funnel with which to act on. So that's another big takeaway. Then I especially love the third one, because we preach that one a lot, and I feel like it's got the least amount of uptake, because most folks think about us on the front end, not the back end. But that's the secret sauce in sort of figuring out how you can use that data to retain your own customers, or who do you need to go pay extra attention to, or who may be about to churn. And listen, as you think about what's happened over the past year and a half in B2B, I would argue that like churn has been the worst, has been the silent killer there versus, we can't acquire customers or grow them or whatever. It's churn that's been the hardest part of that for, I think, a lot of these companies to deal with.
Pretty hard. I mean, it's not going to be the same, because as you mentioned, it's like 160,000 companies or products in your this thing across 2,000 categories, which is basically 80 companies per category. For every single small sub-end category, there are at least 80 companies, which means there can be at least 25 to 30 valid alternatives.
Oh yeah, Yeah, I mean, you get in some of the ones like CRM, ERP. I mean, you're talking 200 to 300 there, and so it's
Wow.
just it's hyper competitive in some of those categories. Project management is probably another one that's like that. So you've really got to be sharp and really understand and know your customer to succeed there. So, but I think G2's buyer intent is just like going that layer deeper and gives you a unique data source that again, listen, we highly recommend it being actioned in sort of an integrated way. How do you get it implemented and integrated in the right way? And then what are you sort of doing to act upon that? And it varies company to company. Everyone's going to use it a little bit differently. Everyone's marketing tech stack is going to look a little bit different. But our unique proposition is to sort of be like Switzerland there, and we're neutral. Like, we just want to help you get it in the right place to action it for you, and that's why we try to create the more. That's why we have the API, and that's why we have as many integrations as we do.
No, that makes sense, because there are multiple executors of data. This data can go back into something like Salesloft. This data can go back into something like a 6sense. This data can also go back into something like LinkedIn, which is an ads platform, or also to vendors like us, where like we give the complete buyer journey and attribution and what is happening in the buyer journey, so that you get a visibility of where you want to invest rather than not to invest, or at least you get a visibility of what you're not doing. If not,
yeah, and I think I love that you mentioned the Salesloft example, because that's a new initiative for us of just kind of what we call G2 for sales, and helping use that buyer intent data to help better inform some of the outbound motion that I think that we've all been on the receiving end of, and that we think could get better. Let's less spray and pray and more of, hey, I saw that you were
reviewing us on G2.
comparing these two vendors. Let me tell you why. What we offer that they don't. Just more informed prospecting and more informed outbound there, I think, is something that'll not only we all enjoy being on the receiving end of more than the other, but it's also more effective. It just works better.
Is this also the direction of the ZoomInfo partnership with G2?
I think the ZoomInfo one can go. I mean, certainly, yes. I mean, we want to go there. We've got integrations with not only Salesloft, ZoomInfo, but Gong, Clary, Outreach, a few others that I think can just help serve a different persona slightly there. I think that the ZoomInfo one is because ZoomInfo is sort of got the sales OS, they've got the marketing OS, they've got a couple different options there. We're just trying to build an integration that serves their customer needs in the best way possible. So I see it as both the sales and marketing integration.
Got it. That makes a lot of sense. And I mean, I see quite a lot of partners on G2's partner hub, which is there, but I would guess, or like, what is the direction of your partnerships also model? Like, how do you integrate while you are Switzerland, how do you work with multiple partners?
Yeah, we first off, we have a great partnerships team that leads all of that, both from a product integration standpoint and down to kind of a sales and marketing standpoint. I've got a fantastic partner marketer. But if you zoom out more broadly, what I would say is, like, we're seeing the rise of, and we're trying to embody this ourselves at G2, of more partner or sort of ecosystem-led growth. And so we've brought in our partnerships team as a kind of a key stakeholder in our pipeline creation side this year. And I think in the past, we may have been more, okay, great, you just bought G2. We see that you should go. We see you're also using 6sense or HubSpot or whatever it may be. Go integrate that. Whereas now we want to get on the front end of that. So we're going to market together with HubSpot, with 6sense, with Demandbase, with whomever it may be, and selling together versus after the fact do this integration. And we find that to be more efficient from a sales perspective, but we also find it better for our customers because they can go ahead and launch that out of the gate. They're more successful earlier. That time to ROI gets a lot shorter.
That's interesting. One thing, since you mentioned AI, and thanks a lot for mentioning the ZoomInfo for sales and G2 for sales and a couple of other partnerships and this thing. AI, I was reading a recent post by a venture capitalist, and he was talking about a trend. Earlier, as a buyer, of course, you were in the RFP and other thing, and then later you get into review sites like Gartner and others to actually look at this thing. Now, search engines don't just give you searches for this thing, they actually give you answers. It's gone beyond Google. There is Gemini, there is Perplexity, there is Bing Chat, and Chat GPT also combined with Bing Search, which is there. Where like I can say like, is HubSpot good for me for 10-seat user for a startup with $2 million in revenue compared to using Salesforce? If I ask a question, Gemini actually brings around data from multiple sources saying that, okay, Salesforce, these are the benefits, HubSpot, these are the benefits for your size, for your scale. This is what we recommend based on these things. How is that going to change the review world?
It's a great question, and I think the short answer is we don't know yet, but we have some educated guesses and some aspects of that we're wanting to lean into. One of them is, and this isn't us just saying, "Listen, we told you so." I think the Washington Post published a report, article a few months ago that was sort of like, here are the most influential sites on informing ChatGPT or some of these LLMs. And G2, at least compared to some of our competitive set, was very high up there. So we still think that, like, listen, this customer voice, this data is all very sort of important in what that process is going to look like moving forward. So whether or not, I don't think we're quite to the point yet where it's like folks are going to trust that as just the final answer. Okay, great. I'm going to go set up the demo and buy that. I see AI buying, and this is my own kind of personal opinion, is it's becoming another peer. Like, you used to go to that friend of yours you used to work with, you used to go to that. And it's not just like, that's the only thing you're going to do, but it's a part of it. Hey, ChatGPT, I just want to see what it says, and then I'm going to go use that. And I think that G2's influence is in that, but I still think I want to go read the reviews. I want to see what the enterprise buyers are saying on G2, and you kind of go from there. So that's one way that I could see it coming to life, and providing value even as that buying process. Listen, we know it's going to change. We talked about how much it's changed over the past 10 years. It'll change over the next 10 because of AI, no doubt. But I don't think that means, okay, great, all these really distinct data sets or review models are going to be no longer valid, and Google's just gonna figure it out. So, and again, too, I think in some ways it's helpful. We obviously have a very strong SEO side at G2, and some of what we've been doing is kind of exploring what we see like the next frontier of SEO looking like, and where we're willing to kind of like place our bets is more on, it's less about the breadth of like, hey, I'm going to use AI to go create all of these like inch deep, mile wide sort of solutions, and more like, let's lean into topical authority. And so like G2, for example, is a site that's got a ton of topical authority around B2B software. So we're going to continue to build out deeper and deeper there. And we think that creates a better data set for AI to sort of leverage as the buying journey evolves. Again, it's the Wild West. No one really knows, but that's where we're willing, like, that's where we're going to kind of test and experiment.
So actually, the question I asked came through a SaaS community WhatsApp group, which we asked, and there was a discussion around that. And there was also one of the viewpoints, something like, while Gemini or Perplexity can say with publicly available information, saying that, okay, this compares to this way based on these many reviews, which is basically scraping through just like how they would do SEO. But G2 or the internal platforms, that is the, what I would call walled garden of G2 inside this thing. Something like Monty, which can run with parts of Gemini or independently, or advanced part of ChatGPT, trained on your reviews and your contextual data, on grid data, on your competitor alternatives data, can give even more context to say that these are the companies. Let's say HubSpot is 10 users and other thing, but given the scale of your other competitors, what they are doing, given the kind of growth which you have seen in this thing, we would recommend maybe a third alternative also, or some other alternative which is there. Now you look at it, and these are the other new CRMs also, which is getting now, let's say, more than 1K reviews, which is there. And consider that and expand the buying set to a lot more contextual thing is what one of the answers provided. And in essence, that's what you also mentioned, which is like, as AI evolves, the whole data sets and how they build on the data sets and the walled gardens will also, I think, given you have all the review data, I think you guys are sitting on some
Well,
form
and
of
too, I
gold
mean, I
mine.
go back to what I said earlier too about G2's data is really like an iceberg. There's this visible portion that sort of Google and the AI folks can go to. Then there's this sort of buried beneath the surface that's unique to us that we can sort of triangulate. And so I think that that tip of the iceberg is great. It's going to help get folks there, and it can guide folks in the right way on their journey. But when you really get down to the nitty gritty, we still think we've got that unique data set that's going to help ultimately guide software buyers to make the right decision.
That's great. Cool. Actually that's pretty significant. We are almost at 8:20, so we have been talking for almost 50 minutes. It didn't seem like 50 minutes for me.
No, I checked the clock a minute ago. And I was like, wow, I thought we were just getting started here.
Yeah, but one thing which is very very clear, I think I take a couple of summarizing points. One is like G2 is prevalent as a review site, and as you said, that's something like everyone has to deal with the neutral partner, which is there in terms of putting out your reviews, being in front with your customer reviews. If you don't have customer reviews, people are not going to buy you. So you have to have a G2 profile. You have to have a G2 review site. So that's something like Google My Business or something like that. You have to list your address on Google if you want to be found somewhere in this thing. That's, I think, one thing which is fundamentally there. Second is like there is a huge amount of iceberg kind of value which comes underlying within the G2 data. There can be competitive intelligence data, there can be category data, there can be trending data, market intelligence data, there can be like what middle of the funnel data which is there and other thing, which can be used in multiple forms. And we are still exploring use cases. I can talk about few customer success use cases. You can talk about, let's say, like how 6sense will use this data, or how a Salesloft or email automation platform will use this data. But I think it's like peeling multiple layers, and as you go through it, I think it's like you would get more and more unique form of use cases which you can build on. And I think maybe there'll be quite a few companies built on top of the G2 data itself. In a sense, that's something which I'm seeing. The last point which you actually made is the trend around categories. There are like 2,100 categories, 160,000 products which are listed, which is consistently growing, and especially AI growing. And how AI comes on top of this review data as well would be the next frontier which is there. That's plentiful, interesting, I think. But at the very basic takeaway, we have to make sure if there is any SaaS company or a SaaS product being built, they have to first start getting listed on G2 and in one of the specific categories and having reviews on. So that's, I think with that, we will get closed on the G2 page and G2 part of it, which is there. Last couple of questions, which is more about yourself and also your this thing. I mean, I did spend quite an amount of time with your this thing. I understand you have kids, which is basically not letting you have time for hobbies. You are interested in some amount of Hollywood and other this thing. Tell me things which are not currently out in the open, so that when we get Google searched or Gemini searched, we can actually be featured like, okay, we have this unique thing about Palmer Hutchinson.
Okay, that's great. A good question. Made me sound like I have no hobbies. I sound like a really boring person.
No.
It's I've got some. I'd like to have more. I just don't have the time for them. One unique thing is I grew up in Mississippi, so a state in the U.S. that's not. It's a relatively small one. You don't necessarily meet a ton of folks from there. I think I live in Atlanta now. The metro area of Atlanta is twice the size of the entire state of Mississippi.
Okay.
So that's a unique, fact about me. My grandparents actually lived right on the Mississippi River in Mississippi.
Oh, wow.
So it's
the Tom Sawyer, Huckleberry Finn.
Exactly. Yeah. Like right there. Didn't see many rafts with kids on them, but you did see a lot of barge traffic, a lot of the farmland and sort of the Midwest. They like ship all of that down the Mississippi River. So it was a fun spot to hang out when I was a kid and watch all of the boats and the barges.
Nice. That's great. That's something which is quite unique. One last thing which is more particularly about G2. I mean, G2, I've been reading about Godard Abel as well, and 3x entrepreneur, 2 multi-million or 8-figure or 9-figure exits already through Oracle and Salesforce, and new things happening. And you also mentioned like more and more new activity within G2 as well. We have G2 for sales, G2 for marketing solutions, G2 for marketing intelligence, and a couple of new products. What do we expect for G2 over the next 2 to 3 years? I mean, either you ring the bell. What are the other things which we can expect from G2?
Yeah, those are great questions. And G2 I've been here 3 years, and we're on a really great trajectory. I think one of the unique things I would say about the past year and a half is that by where we sit, we were able to kind of be a little bit of the canary in the coal mine. Like we saw some of the pullback happening early. And so we ourselves were able to kind of reallocate, rebudget, and weather the storm well. I think that frankly, we're excited about the opportunity that AI is going to bring and how that's going to evolve our business and grow it. One thing we did mention is we've got one of our co-founders started the company with Godard. Tim Handorf runs our G2 Labs project, which we're always incubating new programs, whether it be AI related, self-serve, PPC, a couple different things that we're rolling out right now. So those are always that sort of test and learn experimentation mentality is great here. But from a broader perspective, I mean, we have really brought in some great new seasoned leaders. So we've got a new CRO who comes to us from Upwork, so really understands sort of that marketplace mentality there. Newest CFO who came from SalesLoft, kind of took them through the great exit that they had. And so, excited about really part of our focus this year internally. There's Frank Slootman, the, I guess, former CEO of Snowflake. I guess he's still there for a little while longer, but
I think he's the chairman still.
Wrote a book called Amp It Up. And so that's a lot of where our internal focus is this year on just sharpening our focus and like renewing our intensity. We think, like, as we've talked about in this conversation, we've got a lot of great product market fit. And how do we just go execute better? How do we get more in, like, less in sort of the strategy world and more in the, like, how do we go turn strategy into execution and make sure that no one's going to out deliver us there? And that's not to say that we're not innovating, that we don't have a lot of great new things coming up. We do, but we think that, like, what's core to our success is that, and then the rest will follow.
That's great. One last question, more of a request. I know G2 has a pretty large office in Bangalore in India. When do we see you in Bangalore?
Oh, that's great. I don't know if I'll be making the trip, but we do bring a lot of our team over October of every year. So TBD if I'll be part of that group, but I know we'll have a couple folks from Chicago coming over and elsewhere in October to partner with the team. Our Bangalore office is over 200 folks now. Now it's more on the we only got one or two folks on the marketing side there. It's mostly on the product R&D side of the house, which is great. But I mean, that's been a fantastic addition, that office, and the growth that we've seen there. Love the partnership that we kind of built out there. And that was something that 3-4 years ago was nascent. We probably had maybe 24 folks over there, and grown that to 200 plus now. So we're excited about not only the opportunity for G2 to grow there, but just like the Indian SaaS market in general is booming, and we love to be part of that as well.
That's great. Hope one day we'll see you here in India or in some other.
I can't wait. I would love to visit.
Yeah, that's great. Thanks a lot, Palmer. It's been a great, exciting session and journey, both about your own marketing journey, but more importantly, what's G2 doing? What are the kind of under the iceberg sites which we have, and how? And thanks for the new term, also, canary in the coal mine, which is basically like telling in advance what are the things which are going to happen, or kind of having that crystal ball into the future of software buying and selling, especially. So it was a very great LinkedIn Live. Thanks a lot for your time.
Thanks for having me. Enjoyed it.
Same.